are some core values that have been prominent throughout the years to the success of the farm?
Well, I think probably one of the most core values is work together with your family, and it's like that old biblical tale of one stick by itself is not that great, but you take a whole bunch of sticks together and bind them tightly, they're unbreakable.
Mm-hmm.
And through thick and thin, good years and bad, I really am very blessed to have my ancestors have come ahead of me and really gave me a foothold in what I've been able to accomplish. I had a real good start. We had, some real estate and a home and a set of parents that instilled, the work ethic in us and responsibility for our actions, because there's always consequences, whether they be good or bad. We always try to move ahead, pay our bills, and do what made sense without making things worse. Our goal was always to make things better. There was occasional setbacks from time to time, but hopefully as the years went on, we improved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what was one of those earliest memories with food and being on the farm that you had?
Oh boy, I'm gonna say trying to get as much milk out of the cows as we could while taking care of them and feeding them in a responsible manner. We never did too much with produce here in my lifetime. Sweet corn, I guess, was our thing as far as produce goes, but primarily we made wholesale milk and sold it to different dairies over the years. And in order to keep that going, you always had to milk a few more cows because the price of milk is static at best. Mm-hmm. Whereas, as we all know, our inputs just keep going up.
And being a family business, I know your dad, was heavily involved. Are there any other big mentors that you learned big lessons from throughout the years?
Oh boy, I never really had much formal education beyond high school. I've looked around and seen people that were, in my mind, successful. Depends on what your definition of success is. The most money, most cows, most land. But I would say that the Hasiotis family of the Cumberland Farms were very successful in 100 years, and I guess I watched what they did, and certainly not at their level by any means, but in a small way, as far as acquiring real estate. They did real well acquiring real estate. Mm-hmm. But my father, he was always the pay-as-you-go plan. We never borrowed any much more than what we could pay back in the foreseeable future. We used it up, wore it out, made it do or do without. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was kind of our philosophy. Even, I will say, probably sometimes we did stuff the hard way, but we're still here after 140 years.
Wow. Now, in the farming reality, there's weather, there's all these hard dynamics. What's one of the hardest problems throughout the years that you had to solve, and how did you solve it?
Feed was a big issue as I was a kid. So sorry.
That's part of it. Oh. That might be the best ringtone I've heard in a long time.
So sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
As a teenager, we traveled all over, baling hay and putting together our to have enough feed to go from one season to the next. So my goal in life was to make a contiguous piece of property all around this farm. When land became available, we bought it. Then we would cut the trees, clear it, stump it, and improve it. So now we have more than enough feed for twice as many cows as we used to have, to go, maybe as many as 14 to 16 months, instead of being just making September to September when we cut the corn. So how we solved it was we cleared land, some of which we had already owned, but the majority of which that I purchased through my adult life. I bought over 20 different pieces of property around the farm on my own. And my dad and I bought a couple together before he passed. And in doing so, it's made this place a self-sustainable. We could get along without any rented land, which is pretty rare in a state like Massachusetts. Yeah.
In that process of being an entrepreneur and running a farm, there's a lot of risk and a lot of stress that's involved, to say the least, right? What would be some advice that you would have for any younger generation of farmers or entrepreneurs in that vein to withstand that wave of stress, anxiety, fear?
I felt that, put my time in over the years, but I had a good start. It would be tough for somebody with no real estate getting out of college with a 4-year degree to get started in this trade. It's so capital intensive, and the return in the dairy world it's pretty small compared to what else you could do with that same amount of money. If you had $2 million, would you buy a small dairy farm or put it into something else that would give you more of a return with less risk and certainly less work? But it is a decent vocation. I always like tangible results. I like to, see the increased amount of milk in the tank. I like to see the offspring from the animals come along. Hopefully every generation improves. I like to see, my favorite time of year, of course, is not Christmas, but Easter, spring, when we get to plant the corn and start again. Farming being the eternal optimist. Even if you have a bad year, you say, well, maybe next year. I don't know if that's answering your question or not.
No, it is.
What advice I'd give any young guy starting out would be you'd have to partner up or couple up with somebody that could get you some real hands-on experience in the day-to-day operations of this trade.
So much what I've heard from my dad and seen is, your diversification in all the different ventures you have. It's not, just the farm. You have, real estate. You have a bunch of different ventures, and in that came solar. Can you talk to me a little bit about the origin of that desire to go solar?
Well, it was primarily because we saw an ad in the Massachusetts Farm Bureau News of a solar company offering to put you on a new roof, and then you could put the solar on top of it, because Massachusetts was at the forefront of renewable energy, especially solar, and there was some wonderful incentives. Actually, my dad is the one that called the company. The barn needed a new roof. The solar was an afterthought at the time. But as we got into it and understood the solar renewable energy credits, how much electricity that could be made, the few moving parts that were involved, literally physically the moving parts, you got your inverters, but it certainly isn't quite as complex as a methane digester. That it really made enough sense on that first array on the barn roof, and And then we were approached by some ground mount people, and then we put in an array or two of our own. The catalyst was the state of Massachusetts and making it economically feasible. I'd like to say I was altruistic and wanted to reduce my carbon footprint, but it was about the money. It was about the money, and it became more apparent as we went on that it was a big, big help paying that light bill. Yep.
You talked about the incentives in Massachusetts, and you've probably seen throughout the years the change of incentives. What's hot now, what's not.
Right.
Yeah, talk to me about the REAP grant specifically and how it's affected your farm and your desire to go solar.
Well, Jordan Energy has helped out immeasurably with the paperwork, with the REAP grants. Paperwork and I don't really mesh that well. Once I get more than 2 pages into it, I start to lose interest in a hurry. But the REAP grants have been really helpful as long as you get them filled out correctly, and the timing is key. Again, I don't believe I'd attempt to do it without Jordan Energy. That's a fact.
I know the story in terms of how you first got connected, and the whole writing the check and him driving away. Maybe you could tell that story as like a refresher. I know it's been years now, but
I'm trying to think how it did go. We had engaged ESI, Energy Systems Incorporated, out of Pennsylvania, to put the roof on, which they would sub out anyway, but they put the roof on and put the panels on, and they were going to apply for the REAP grant. And I think Bill came along and we gave him a check for $1,000, not knowing that ESI was applying for the grant. And then after we found out that ESI was applying, and I believe we got the grant through them, that Bill Jordan came back and gave us the check back, which in this day and age, it was highly unusual. Most of that would, it'd be gone. But that's what made me think, the guy is, honest and transparent. Whereas I've said it ad nauseum too many times, is when that solar rush came, there were guys coming around every day, that were a week before they'd been selling penny stocks in Boca Raton or selling used cars in Chelmsford. And all of a sudden they wanted to sign you up for the solar. And with Bill Jordan, it was somebody that was in the solar business and involved in agriculture, and was straight with us.
Yeah, part of the logo, or not the logo, but the motto for Jordan Energy was empowering progress, and I changed it in the past year to include rooted in trust, and that dynamic of being with the farmer and knowing their reality, and then also not just shooting them straight, right, and being somebody that can be real in that aspect of navigating the difficulties within what it takes to install solar.
I'd like to know, this is a little bit of an aside, but I'd kind of like to know of the plethora of solar shysters that came around a dozen, 15 years ago. I'd like to know what a lot of them are doing now. I know longevity isn't the end all to success, but it tells me a little bit of something about the individual that he's stuck with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is a
stubbornness.
Yeah, yeah, either that or, you know, maybe insanity. Yeah, tenaciousness.
Hard-headedness.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's been a long relationship where there's been multiple projects. Is there one specific project that you felt most proud of when it comes to the Jordan Energy relationship with solar?
I tell you, anything we did, I'm very, very happy with the cannabis building. I was very happy. I think it was by the skin of our teeth, the Navasun project at the Randall Pond Industrial Park. I think I would have liked to negotiated the yearly inflation riser a little bit better, but I was in a panic there because I knew we were running out of time. And but I'm very grateful that we got that one in the industrial park and is up and
There's a
running.
moratorium after that. Right?
After that, I believe there was a moratorium. Wrongfully directed,
Yeah.
as is some of the rules even now. But it was early on. It was earlier on in the solar gold rush. So it was sometimes there was moving targets.
Well, a theme that has come up throughout the years, and something that we really want to highlight is how solar can play a role in the generational farming aspect of succession planning and building that within the future generations. This is something that isn't just here for a couple months and gone. It's a long-term commitment of the warranties are sometimes 25 years and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
How have you seen that aspect of solar with your own family business?
I'll tell you, it's ratcheted up our lifestyle for sure. If I just relied on the milk check, we wouldn't be able to have the lifestyle that we enjoy now. There was a stretch years ago, 40 years ago, when people said the time of the diversified farmer is gone. You need to focus on what you do well. Make milk and make a lot of it. But I never really liked that because I liked a little bit of income streams from different things that would not be affected so much, say, by the weather or the price of milk or consumer sentiment or panic or whatever you want to have it. I mean, there's tales of Alar that was used in the Apple business that I go back to, where there was some insignificant amount of it was a spray that was used on apples, and I'll never forget that. I don't know how many trailer loads, tanker loads of apple juice you'd have to drink a day to increase your risk, but there was some woman on TV that wanted to know if it was safe to dump that apple juice down the drain in her home. And that's what you're up against sometime in the dairy world, or the mad cow disease, as far as meat goes. And I wanted to have something else cooking that would provide me some income without putting all my eggs in one basket.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Heather's work does quite a bit in solar with Farm Credit, I believe, right? So
she's a grant. She's writing the grants as about as steady as she can. However, she did share with me this last weekend that the federal grants, so many are in limbo right now, and she feels quite a lot of guilt that she can't guarantee those farmers that the money they spend with having her write the grants, will it be successful? Will it come through? How do you bill somebody for writing a grant and tell them, geez, I'm sorry, it didn't happen, maybe next time? That's a risk. It's a risk you got to take.
Now, if there's any moment right now would be a great time to do like kind of a call to action, right, of support in terms of incentives and
Mhm.
funding and
We
on
have
the
quite
federal.
a few grants like yours, so referencing yours,
Yeah.
um, it's an intelligent decision, I think, to um, fund those kind of grants from the federal government towards the energy independence. But I'm butting in here.
No, that's yeah. I mean, if that's a goal of energy independence and to wean us off the fossil fuels just a little bit, uh, I really can't see the downside of the solar panels. Um, they've worked well for us, and I will add this: um, my wife monitors the production of the barn roof, the cannabis building roof, the little camp we have. She watches them pretty close. In that barn roof, I think we're in our, I don't know, 13 or 14 years, and we haven't seen the degradation in production that they said, they meaning the solar company, I think they told us expect a 2% loss per year or something like that. And we haven't seen it. They've stayed producing pretty well. And I'm sure the newer panels probably are even better than the ones that we've got up there now.
One of the terms that we use internally when we kind of talk about you and other farmers that we work with is sun farmer, and I wanted to see what you thought of that term and like your first kind of reaction to hearing yourself as a sun farmer.
I feel it may be giving me a little too much credit. I guess the word isn't credit. Again, I wasn't altruistic about it. It made sense that you could make your own juice from those solar panels. I have heard, in fact, some of the antis they didn't like it called a solar farm, but I'd call a ground mount a solar farm because you're harvesting the sun, not unlike soybeans or corn or hay or anything else. You're just converting that solar energy into electricity rather than having to put it through a cow. Or I guess call it sun farmer, solar farm. Yeah, I got no problem with that.
Yeah, there was actually in our conversation this past week of the terminology of solar farm and kind of the connotation it has, and for sure there is a aspect like you talked about earlier, right, of all these penny stock guys who got into the solar industry and
Yeah,
a lot of bad experiences people had as
yeah,
farmers kind of trying to take up their best farmland rather than using their marginal farmland.
right.
And now we've seen and we're proposing with you this agrivoltaics project where it's dual use, right? So you
Mhm.
have the land that produces food while also capturing the sun. You've always been somebody that's on the precipice of change, right? Being a pioneer in a lot of ways. How do you feel about this agrivoltaics field, and what are your hopes for that in the future?
Well, again, primarily I'm motivated by the money, by the income that can be generated from the electric revenue, and I'm willing to sacrifice some of the convenience or ease of farming in a field without any obstructions in lieu of the income. I've come to terms with it this way, saying, well, um, if the solar gets 75% of what they could, and farming I could get 75% of what I could, that's 150%, which is better than if the field was 100% solar or 100% farming. I'm still better off if I share it that way. They'll have to pay attention going between the rows. We'll have to focus around the impediments. But everything has a cost, and I really believe from the numbers I've seen that it's going to be worth the extra effort.
Now, a term that when it comes to agrivoltaics that some say is, oh, this is kind of just like greenwashing, right? And in that same vein, right, you know, there are people and are realities that kind of can lead towards that. What type of agrivoltaics do you want to implore?
I would think I'd like to do something which doesn't involve any handwork. I want to be able to do it from the seat of a tractor. And I would also make mention that some of the people that are anti-large arrays, and they have been anti-clearing of forest to put the arrays in because of the carbon they supposedly sequester. I've got a piece of property that has very poor soil, doesn't even grow good trees. And it would be wonderful for a solar array because the trees on this property don't get any much bigger than 10 inches through because the soil is so poor. But with a broad brush, the anti-movement has changed the rules so you can't clear that property to put solar on. And really, that's the kind of land that it should go on, that marginal, non-productive, poor soil land.
Yeah. It was funny. I was at the Farm Aid concert with Jig Morley from Hyperion, and he was talking about you, and just with very high regards. And I'm thinking about your, not just reputation here, but what people see in you and this kind of solar dynamic of being somebody that's really taken about the change in a really impactful way. Is there any advice you would give to somebody that's on the decision juncture as a farmer to diversify into solar?
I'm not privy to the up-to-date financial tax benefits to the solar, but I'm very, very grateful that we got involved in it, and I'd like to get involved in it some more because it just makes financial sense to do it. And it's been, I wouldn't hesitate to move forward with solar. It's been a great thing for us. We use land that we would have never got the kind of income out of that we are now receiving from solar. And we had the roof mounts make wonderful sense. Put on a new roof, put on the solar, and it's been great income. It's been great income.
Yeah, when you said the financial part, it kind of brought my mind to a conversation I've been having with my dad lately. On a dream of ours is to create a farmer fund where projects can be funded through investment from farmers so they can reap the greatest returns, right? So often in the finance realm, the greatest returns come from the place where the money is, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times farmers have been kind of like caught in just getting like a lease rate or a specific rate. Yeah, what would your insight be on something like that, where it's a collective of farmers or everyday people kind of coming together to reap the benefits from solar?
I think if somebody can put that together, in a pro forma to see what it's going to cost, what the investment would be, and what the return would be, I think it would be wonderful. I think it'd be wonderful, especially if where they are, they're not set up to either do it on their own. I think collectively they probably could join up together and make it a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to bring in my dad if you want to jump over there to kind of spend some time just going through.
Start by saying that was probably the smartest step I've taken in 16 years. Was it was a rainy day, and I said I'm going to go drive back to George and give him this check back because the guys at ESI. I'm not convinced they were really going to write that grant for you, but they definitely said they were when they heard somebody else was moving in, and so we've done very inexpensive refundable deposit check, and we've only had to refund a couple times, and one of them was the start of a good relationship where my next memory was I think Heather was at Cornell and your dad was at it was the morning break time at your mom's house, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And the fire was going. It was it wasn't summer yet by any
No,
means.
no.
And you were writing her a check to study the summer with Cornell in Germany and look at anaerobic digestion and solar projects, wind projects. But here was three generations sitting having such a great time with each other. His dad pulls out this National Grid bill that said zero. He holds it up. He goes, "That's the kind of bill I'd like to receive."
He must have. He showed that to one person. He showed it to 100. Yeah, he's pretty proud of that zero bill from National Grid.
The next thing you know, he's jumping on a tractor. He was active to the very end. Yeah. I got work to do. This coffee break is over.
That's right.
But I think the relationships of the three generation kind of hit me personally. I've talked about my uncles and my cousins being in agriculture, and so to see family farms that actually work well, it doesn't happen by accident, And I think daughters working, both of them at Farm Credit, they're in the ag business. I know.
Yep.
Jimmy's done well for himself in New York as well. It's kind of nice to see the family unity. You have a lot of grandchildren now that are starting to get in the mix, right?
Yeah.
How many grandchildren do you have?
There is 7.
7.
7 already.
We got to play some catch up. I'm only a couple years younger than you. We
There'll be time.
We got the big goose egg.
That,
No rush. No
it'll all
rush.
come at once. That's the way that goes. That's the way that goes.
Well, that's many blessings. Your dad's passed away. We were at the services the memorial service that you organized. How many years is it now? It's 4 or 5. 4 or 5 years.
Probably close to 4. Yeah.
Do you think about him much when you're on a tractor?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I guess I miss most having somebody to bounce an idea off of.
Yeah.
Asking an opinion of.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
You
did that for a long time with him.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Sometimes it was the answer I wanted. Sometimes it wasn't.
Yeah.
But
well,
made it work.
One of the quotes that I most appreciate, and you've said it in similar language, but you would say to me, there's been about 20 solar people that have come to my farm gate. You seem to be the first people that actually care about my life as a farmer, and I hope you felt that. It's very genuine. I think it's fascinating, and you really have to have so many different buckets of knowledge to be successful as a farmer. And most people underappreciate that. I certainly have enjoyed our relationship as you've, explained how things are going, whether it's selling animals on Tuesdays or buying animals on Tuesdays. You've also introduced us to a lot of neighboring farms, which we're very grateful for, because some of them have actually ended up working with us, and that has worked out well.
Good.
Yeah. So we have new chapters on the solar. From my perspective, it's exciting to do the agrivoltaic projects we've talked about for 2025, 2026.
Yeah.
And, you've noted the cannabis building. I think it's particularly cool that you're the power company for your tenant, Herrick's Tavern. and Mary Beth and Mary in the office do the billing.
Grateful for that too. Yeah, takes us out of that paperwork loop.
one of the areas where I think we have to up our game, and I think we've made some recommendations, but I think internally up our game is we're 15 years in, 16 years in now, is in the operation and maintenance support for systems. Because I know that Christine monitors, but it also has been a pain if an inverter goes down.
We, not to interrupt, but we have trial and error. We have got some an outfit now. I think they're out of Northampton that are pretty responsive. And I can't tell you the name. I'd have to look in my checkbook to see what the outfit. But they're closer. They're close by, and instead of coming from Hopkinton, Mass, which is an hour and 20 minutes. And when you call them, you can get somebody on the phone that knows what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's been a little bit of a learning curve, because it's true there isn't very many moving parts with the solar, but what moving parts are there are beyond me.
Yeah.
So
when you get 10, 15 years in, you have to have some maintenance to keep it
stuff
going.
starts going downhill.
Yeah. But where your leases of land are easier for the solar, because it's just a paycheck and it's someone else's problems, right?
It is, but you know, I have a little bit of regret there. The deeper I would get involved, the more income you could get, as well as the investment tax credit. But at this point in my life with my wife, she's very conservative, very hesitant about putting a lot of money out to get involved in something like that.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. But a company like ours should be assuming more of that, and that's part of our growth and course for improvement. Well, a lot of times we have another customer, Richard Ball, who's the current Commissioner of Agriculture in New York. We did solar for him in 2010. Around the same time we were meeting up.
Coming here.
And he said once, that meant a lot to me, comparing our business to a solar company that's since been acquired and gone bankrupt and is out of business.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys are in two different businesses. They're in the selling solar panel business, and you people are in the relationship business, and those are two different things. So we've tried to have genuine concern for the solar being additive, and that is because of the personal relationship. You've mentioned it has to make economic sense, but I personally want to thank you for, I'll say, taking me into the family. When you invited us to Heather's wedding, I said, well, those were the kind of relationships I hope would evolve by doing a good job and gaining people's confidence. So your family has a special place in our heart. We always appreciate the Christmas card with more grandchildren, it seems, every year in the picture, and that's a great blessing. But I think there's, when you have trust with people, there's a basis for doing new projects together that fit, and our time horizons are families' life cycles. I like to have confidence in who I'm talking to. We'll go and get some lunch at Herrick's, and I always think, wow, George is making money by selling the power to his tenant, who's saving money because George is charging him less than National Grid charges him. So that's like a win-win-win all the way around, not to mention it's a good lunch. and probably from time to time, it may not be a bad idea in some form, in a letter or something, saying this is what you're paying now, and this is what you would be paying if you were getting it from National Grid. We will show them just how grateful they should be. Well, Dairy Farmers America has asked for what are the economic results of some of these solar projects, and we're always sensitive because that's your business. But we're putting that together, and it's a pretty compelling story for that rooftop array. I mean, February was terrible because it was so cold, the ice didn't freeze off. But that's nature, and we know that is going to happen. It's produced above what we said it would, and that is... I think you're the first guy. I never knew what a pro forma was till I met you, about how things
this is what it's going to cost, and this is how long it's going to take, and this is what the payback should be.
Yeah.
You're right. Your pro formas, if anything, they've been conservative in the actuality of how it produced.
Well, we try to be conservative so that when results eclipse what you estimated, you say, hey, this has gone better than they said it would, because there are a lot of those snake oil salesmen blowing a lot of smoke with 5 to 7% escalation rates for 25 years. You're going to save millions and millions of dollars. That it was a disservice to our industry, you know.
Yeah.
So,
What do they say? It's better to is it overperform than
under promise and overperform.
that's right.
We've tried to do that.
Yeah, that's right. I think you've succeeded pretty well.
Well, I want to get on one of those concert lists with you.
I don't know what I got coming up next.
So it's our. I made a mistake yesterday driving back from New York. It's our 35th wedding anniversary,
35th. Yeah.
and my wife loves Bruno Mars.
Yep.
So I got 2 tickets to see Bruno Mars
Where?
in Las Vegas the weekend before the RE Plus concert. It's the RE Plus conference in Las Vegas. And damned if she doesn't have something already planned for that weekend. So I got to see how I transfer StubHub. I need to. My son's helping this.
Well, you need.
We
need somebody 30 years younger helping. That's the truth. There's no doubt about it.
That's why I got my son and daughter helping us out to keep on the right track.
You got. I'll tell you, I got tickets when Aerosmith set up a residency in Las Vegas, and then Steven Tyler's vocal cords
Went out on.
Yeah. So I mean, there was no problem. I mean, I got the refund anyway. But
So I got to figure out how I could sell these or transfer them to another date. I'm hoping Steven can help me.
Yeah. Your wife doesn't know about it yet.
I said, save these dates. I had already bought the tickets. She said, sorry, I can't be with you.
Well, you could say, you suggest anybody I could bring?
No, I have to be. It's actually a race for her sister who died of brain cancer in Philadelphia. So it's I have to be at that. I'll just figure out dates. I'll tell her. We're actually going to go to Boston for. We have a goddaughter who just had a baby, so we're gonna spend 2 nights. That's Friday. There's your dad. What a great picture.